I now give the floor to Mr. Miroslav Polzer, Secretary General of IAAI, to present the highlights of the breakout session on the topic Build Resilient Infrastructure, Promote Inclusive and Sustainable Industrialization, and Foster Innovation. Mr. Polzer, you have the floor.
Mr. President, dear youth, dear excellencies, colleagues, friends, we the peoples of the United Nations have adopted with Agenda 2030 a new vision for people, planet, prosperity and peace, a compass for a journey towards a world without poverty and with shared prosperity. Several provisions of the Agenda 2030 make it clear that everybody, every global citizen, every public and private institution on Earth needs to be on board of this new journey and has to contribute to this new set of global goals with everyday decisions on resource use, consumption, production and trade that integrates this new dimension of our global interdependence. As it is clear that standard market economy approaches of multi-stakeholder coordination don't deliver automatically the desired results in terms of provision of local and global public goods, the question is what the new conceptual framework and the institutional vehicle will be that will help organize and incentivize multi-stakeholder engagement and especially youth action in Agenda 2030 implementation. In the SDG9 breakout session, Build Resilient Infrastructure, Promote Inclusive and Sustainable Industrialization and Foster Innovation, we have worked on providing answers, systemic solutions to this question. And our answer is that globally coordinated and empowered social entrepreneurship enabled through new technologies like blockchain and digital social currencies is the formula for meaningful and rewarding integration of youth-led local action in globally coordinated Agenda 2030 implementation. So what does globally coordinated and empowered social entrepreneurship mean and how does it relate to SDG 9? Globally coordinated and empowered social entrepreneurship for Agenda 2030 implementation means that the full potential of local youth-led entrepreneurial activity for the SDGs can be harnessed only if there is a combination of global and local, technical and institutional infrastructure in place. An Agenda 2030 marketplace which helps first young social entrepreneurs to document and verify their SDG-related activities. Second, it helps to assess the impact of these activities with regard to their contribution to SDGs in a standardized, transparent and crowdsourced manner. And third, such a marketplace facilitates the trading of certified SDGs impact assets in a blended financing framework enabled by blockchain technology and digital social currencies, and thus facilitating access of small and even micro social entrepreneurs to funding from the huge climate and sustainable development related public and private resources like the Green Climate Fund, carbon markets, official development assistance, green bonds, social responsibility bonds, social impact bonds, as well as local barter economy resources, which constitute an enormous potential demand side for Agenda 2030 social entrepreneurship activities, once the systemic enabling requirements are being put in place. The breakout session built on the outcomes of the workshop Youth Empowerment for Agenda 2030 Actions through Social Entrepreneurship and Digital Social Currencies, organized by UNIDO, IAI and UN Habitat on the 16th of January 2017 at Vienna International Center in Austria, and the Youth Entrepreneurship 2030 community that has been established there in Vienna and the action points developed by this community. With these action points, the Youth Entrepreneurship 2030 community expresses its readiness to serve as a multi-stakeholder community of Agenda 2030 social entrepreneurship promoters and as a point of crystallization for social entrepreneurship capacity building for Agenda 2030, building on the UN system-wide SDG 9 thematic leadership of UNIDO, as well as building on the joint youth entrepreneurship capacity building mandate of UNIDO and UN Habitat given through UN system-wide action plan on youth. The Youth Entrepreneurship 2030 community, the participants of the SDG9 breakout sessions, are advocating for strong recognition of social entrepreneurship in the SDG9 review report of the High-Level Political Forum 2017, which shall translate into an enabling policy framework on global and national levels. And we are delighted to report that UN Secretary-General Special Envoy on Youth Employment, Mr. Werner Faymann, has assured us his full support on these efforts. And we call also on enhanced efforts of academia, business sector, and global standard-setting bodies towards the development of easy-to-handle impact assessment standards for Agenda 2030 social entrepreneurship. And there's a very strong call for resources from global, public, private, and philanthropic sources holders for setting up the Agenda 2030 marketplace. Furthermore, there is also the call for an enabling local ecosystem, including the physical resources. And we hope that, and there's also the proposal for global social entrepreneurship at the Agenda 2030 action days, competitions, and other outreach and communication efforts. We hope that these, our proposals, will fit and feed into the high-level political forum review of SDG9, and that the global community and the UN system will help social entrepreneurs all around the world to contribute to implementation of Agenda 2030. Thank you for your time.
I thank Mr. Polzer for his very comprehensive statement of what went on in the interactive segment to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. I thank you. I now give the floor to Anga Martha, MGCY Global Focal Point on Oceans, to present the highlights of the breakout session on the topic, Conserve and Sustainably Use the Oceans, Seas, and Marine Resources for Sustainable Development. Mr. Martha, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, ministers, ambassador, and friends. I'm here to report back on the breakout session on SDGs 14, Conserve and Sustainably Use of Oceans, Seas, and Marine Resources for Sustainable Development. In the discussion, we found several challenges concerning to the SDGs 14. Oceans are threatened by human activities, including marine litters, biodiversity loss and depletion of fish stocks, ocean acidification, offal exploitation, living resources, and also pollution from land-based and sea-based sources. We're also talking about profiling ocean issues on SDGs 14 to be more appealing to young people and also global communities. Meanwhile, oceans are critical for sustainable development and crucial to human well-being and economic societies. SDGs 14 on life below water endeavors to safeguard of the healthy, productive, and resilient oceans. And these goals have a strong linkages with other SDGs goals. It is essential to achieve Sustainable Development Goals SDG 14 in order to achieve the other SDGs goal and vice versa. We also highlight the importance of education on oceans issues to increase ocean literacy. It is not only this education is important for all youth, not only for those young people who live in oceans area, but also young people who live in landlocked countries, to strengthen awareness of importance of ocean for our planet's well-being and sustainable development. We are also excited to participate and meaningfully participate in the Ocean Conference, co-hosted by Fiji and Sweden, and also convened by the Presidents of UN General Assembly in June 2017. We see the importance of the youth participation in the call for action, partnership dialogues, and also voluntary commitment for the oceans. We further talking about several initiatives, current initiatives that are currently ongoing, which the first initiative is the consultation by the UN Major Group on Children and Youth that will going on for the Ocean Conference. UNESCO also working on some ocean literacy activities. There's also global campaign on marine litters by UNEP, and the goals.org will launch the Ocean Course on March 2017. Issues on ocean are all man-made problems and require man-made solutions. We believe that inclusive participation is needed, and young people is an important partner in defining the future of ocean. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Mr. Anga Matha for his comprehensive report on how to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and youth participants, we have heard the last speaker reporting back on the highlights of the discussions in the breakout sessions held earlier today. I would like to once again thank all our moderators for their proficient facilitation of respective interactive discussions, which we enjoyed very much. I also want to thank all delegations for their active participation in the breakout sessions. We will now continue shortly with the panel discussion, and now we now pause briefly to change the podium. Please remain seated. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, youth participants, as announced in today's journal, we will continue this afternoon's meeting with a panel discussion on the topic, I quote, "Role of Technology in Implementing the Sustainable Development Goals," unquote. Allow me to first welcome our panelists, and I will just announce who they are before I hand over the meeting to the moderator. I'm not sure if the moderator, if you have a list of the panelists, you have a list?
I do, yes.
You do have? I'll give the opportunity to you to please introduce our panelists and then take over and moderate the session.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Erhard Grafe, and I have the honor of moderating today's final plenary. I'm a PhD researcher at the Center for Civic Media at the MIT Media Lab, where I work on how people design or use media and technology for civic and political engagement. And as our chair shared, the panel is entitled Role of Technology in Implementing and Monitoring the SDGs, but many of these issues have already been anticipated by conversations throughout the day. During today's opening remarks, His Excellency Mr. Peter Thompson emphasized how important it is that we understand the transformative and inclusive thrust of this youth forum. And Ireland's youth delegate Samantha O'Brien called for youth being empowered to help define their role in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. One of the most exciting opportunities for youth empowerment is technology. Young people have been at the fore of developing technological tools and media solutions around the world with the aim of enhancing collaboration and efficacy through digital engagement. Yet many young people around the world lack access to the digital tools, reliable internet, and other infrastructure necessary to leverage new technology. And some youth who have access find that their ability to express themselves or learn about important topics are hampered by internet and media censorship or confused by deliberate disinformation. So in this session, we're going to try and highlight and ask questions about the benefits from and barriers to enhancing the role of young practitioners in driving appropriate development and use of new technologies to overcome challenges in sustainable development, the contributions youth have made to technologies and digital tools that promote community-based participatory engagement and address developmental challenges, and last but not least, access to technology and information to equip youth with skills and tools. If you find this topic important, as I think you will, I encourage you to attend tomorrow's breakout on youth consultation on technology and SDGs. So I will now introduce the panelists and ask them to share some brief comments on their own work at the intersection of youth empowerment, technology, and media innovation, and the Sustainable Development Goals. I'll begin with James Powell. James is from UNICEF's Global Innovation Center and is the global lead for UReport, an open source system that allows people to report on development issues in their community and receive life-saving information via SMS, Facebook Messenger, and other digital channels. James works with the private sector, innovation leads across UNICEF country offices, and international NGOs to support the scale up of innovation projects in new and existing countries throughout the entire project lifecycle. James?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This morning we heard from the youth envoy. He said today, we are the most connected generation in history. And he's right. And it's not going backwards. We're only going to get more connected. So how we utilize technology to monitor and also reach SDGs is vital to actually achieving that goal. The President of the General Assembly said we need bold, new ideas. I think some of those are beginning to arrive, and they're being driven by many of the people in this room. Unlike the MDGs, we now have the tools that actually reach millions of people. They exist. This isn't something that's coming in the future. They work in real time, and they use handsets, mobile phones, that are almost ubiquitous. We can do this in hard-to-reach places, and we can ensure that people that have not been part of the development process or discourse before can be now. Some of our projects that we work with alongside Scouts, the Girl Guides, and many local NGOs are in a number of places around the world, 34 countries, including Central African Republic, Zimbabwe, Myanmar recently, Thailand, Brazil, Guatemala, and many more. To ensure that this is as inclusive as possible, we have to look at everything through an equity lens. You'll hear people at UNICEF say that a lot. We're trying to reach the most marginalized people. To do that, it has to be affordable. Young people need to be able to access technology without any cost, ideally. And this is quite easy to achieve as long as the private sector can help partner with governments and NGOs and CSOs to make that achievable, and also governments actually put their money where their mouth is. And member states can sponsor these initiatives to make sure that they can listen to the young people themselves. Meanwhile, young people become empowered because this is actually run by young people. It's run by youth organizations and NGOs and CSOs for the people, by the people. Look, the digital world can be a pretty dangerous place for a young person especially, also for governments, member states actually. Whoever posts anything anywhere publicly doesn't really know what's going to happen to them next. An innocuous remark, you can quickly be jumped on by people you've known half your life. And that goes for everybody. So we need to think very seriously about how all of this happens in a safe space and how we engage that way, which is why these tools need to be anonymous and people need to be able to use direct messages. This isn't about posting something on a wall and taking your chances. You need to be able to express yourself without fear of any repercussion. So I'll wrap up soon because I feel like I'm going on. But the technology is available. One type of technology is called RapidPro. It's open source. You can get it on GitHub. You can examine it. You can look at the development timelines on it and where it's going in the future. These bold new opportunities are out there. There's numerous examples. So I don't think it's a case of waiting for them to happen, but taking advantage of what's there, making sure that participation is meaningful. No more excuses. The tools are available, and if people really want to engage, millions of young people, they actually can do it today. Thank you.
Thank you, James. You can apply. I'm now going to turn to Zoe Carlotide. Zoe is a women's rights advocate who has been working for World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts for the past year and a half in several different capacities, currently as their U-Report manager. In this role, she works with Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, as well as UNICEF, WSOM, and ISEC to deliver girl-led polls to map and understand girls' priorities and concerns and amplify their voices with global decision makers and the Girl Guides and Girl Scouts movement's advocacy, programming, and campaign work.
Thank you very much. That was an amazing introduction. That was half of my speech, so I'll jump straight into the good stuff. So as Ed had said, my name is Zoe, and I'm WAGS's U-Report manager. So as a movement of 10 million girls in 146 countries, with a focus on helping girls and young women find their voice within a world that often seems it would prefer to silence it, we know the challenges of supporting girls and young women to truly make their voice heard. Due to structural gender inequality, harmful stereotypes, and deep-seated norms and values about what a girl or young woman should, or is often the case, should not do or say, girls are often held back from reaching their full potential or accessing their hard-won and constantly challenged equal rights. However, through U-Report, we've been able to offer girls and young women, as well as all U-Reporters, a safe, smart platform to report on issues affecting their lives, to share success stories on how they are finding solutions to these challenges that we all face. And we invite them to give recommendations to their governments and other decision makers on how to build the world that we want to see. U-Report offers us a unique insight into young people's perceptions and therefore allows us to collect qualitative data in almost a quantitative format. And currently, in line with our thematic focus and in response to U-Reporters having nominated this as a priority area of concern, we have been exploring issues around Goal 5 on gender equality. Our current poll, which is still live and you can find on the U-Report website, received over 4,000 responses from U-Reporters aged 13 and up from over 40 countries. And we aimed at uncovering young people's perceptions around indicator 5.2.2 on incidences of sexual violence committed against women by a non-partner in the last 12 months. 53% reported knowing a girl or woman who had been a victim of sexual violence. And as we often see, the majority of these cases were girls, 60% in this case. Perhaps more revealing was the state of young people's norms and values on this issue. While 72% of U-Reporters did agree that it's never okay to pressure a girl into sex, 28% said it could be sometimes. That's nearly 1/3. Finally, 75% of the U-Reporters who answered our poll told us they believe the situation around sexual violence for girls and women is getting worse in their community and in the world. So we can see we've got a lot of work to do. As we've heard and seen today, sexual violence against girls and women is more than just a human rights concern in its own right. It's a barrier to equal access to many of the other rights and services and freedoms that other people get to enjoy. As part of our objective to integrate young people into the monitoring and review process of the Sustainable Development Goals, we call on ministerial representatives here to hear our voice, recognize our concerns, and listen to our suggestions on how to succeed in delivering Goal 5 and all of the SDGs, and to invite us to work with you towards building a future where we all feel safe and we're able to enjoy our highest potential as citizens of the world. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Nevena Vukasinovic. Nevena serves as Secretary General for European Non-Governmental Sports Organization for Youth. She's also the focal point for the UN-MGCY Science Policy Interface Platform, which aims at facilitating meaningful engagement of young scientists, engineers, and innovators in science and technology fora within the UN system.
Thank you, Erhard. Your Excellencies, the youth, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to join my other youth colleagues from UN Major Group of Children and Youth, and I'm happy to raise our youth voice on today's topic on behalf of our Science Policy Interface platform, and building upon my studies and experiences at the intersection of my daily engagements between development of active role of youth in European sports and raise of digital public diplomacy within Southern Europe. Technology is ubiquitous and has become integrated in all aspects of our lives. There are ongoing debates on whether technology has had a positive or negative impact on our society and environment. The answer is both. The paradox tilts with the context of use and parameters of impact, from the Stone Age to the age of quantum computing. Technology has become so commonplace that it becomes difficult to accurately measure its effects on our daily lives and future generations. It is, however, undisputed that technology has raised us into the Anthropocene. However, as outlined in the Goal 17 of the 2030 Agenda, technology is a key driver to implementing the SDGs through the promotion of knowledge exchange, technology transfer, statistical capacity building, and conductive science innovation policy environments. In order to reap the full benefits of the broad term we call technology, while minimizing intended or unintended negative consequences, we have 7 recommendations to share on the road to 2030. Technology cannot be developed in vacuum. We say no to innovation for the sake of innovation. Tech and innovation should be employed to fill gaps. To be precise, those identified during thematic and volunteer national reviews of the implementation, monitoring, follow-up, and review of the SDGs. Inclusive access doesn't mean including youth only, but considering community needs as central to technology design, ensuring its adaptation to rapidly changing environments. Technology use should be informed by comprehensive data-based impact assessments before, during, and after its implementation. We must identify and uproot barriers preventing equitable access to technology. When there is no one-size-fits-all solution, science policy environments need to reflect local context by integrating local practices and traditional knowledge. We promote open science, democratization of software hardware tools, enhance spaces for citizen science, facilitate knowledge sharing and effective science communication between different stakeholders. We call on promoting community-driven ICT skills and digital literacy that contribute to sustainable livelihoods and resilient societies, as well as decent jobs for youth. We feel it is key to enhance institutional spaces for meaningful participation of young practitioners, scientists, engineers, innovators, and others in strengthening the science policy component of sustainable development. The UN MGCY has focused heavily in this, and excited is to share avenues for all of you to meaningfully engage in various upcoming science, technology, and policy fora within UN system to work towards the SDGs. In this discussion, I refuse to be left behind and want all of you to join the dialogue. I'm standing in front of you today together with Amira from Aleppo and Michael from Cologne, both founders of 2 groundbreaking initiatives, the Syrian Social Innovators and the first ever sports dictionary app for refugees. There are many others. Action means shared engagement, such as the engagement of the city of Novi Sad in my country of Serbia, expected to be most tech innovative and green European youth capital in 2019. Young people are best catalysts of the hope in the world. Technologies are making this hope contagious. Thank you.
Next, we hear from Zain Habu. Zain is the Senior Director for Digital and Media Strategy at the United Nations Foundation, where she develops and oversees digital, video, photo, and mobile strategy for the Foundation and its 17+ worldwide campaigns and initiatives.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mr. President, for having me here. I'll keep my remarks brief, and I changed them, I would say, 100 times based on what everybody here was saying, and was horribly impressed by everything I heard. So congratulations to everyone on their incredible work. The UN Foundation was founded 17 years ago by Ted Turner, one of the biggest names in the media world. We were really founded to be able to connect, our real mission is to connect you with the United Nations, and also to be able to maintain strong US-UN relations. So as you can imagine, we are very busy these days in Washington, D.C. One of our main goals is to really raise awareness about the goals themselves. We worked strongly on the Millennium Development Goals and transitioned into the Sustainable Development Goals. And whether you're moving from 8 to 17, we're more than happy to be able to help with this. And while I can talk about technology and different platforms that we use, I would really say that one of the strongest and sort of most old school platforms that we use is that of media. We at the UN Foundation are big believers in media partnerships. We work closely with everyone from the Hindustan Times to the LA Times to Vice, Vox, Mashable, etc. And then we find that actually we have a three-tiered approach to talk about the SDGs, using print publications, digital-only publications, and then moving into what we think is potentially, and I don't have the answer to this because I don't have a magic 8-ball, but what's going to be the next thing in 5 years. So that's how we invest in our storytelling about the goals. We also, like Nevena was saying, don't believe that you invent technology just to create it. So we go where the audience already exists, leveraging platforms such as Snapchat, Instagram, where we have a project called InstaCore, which is an Instagram-only core of photographers who go behind the world and here actually at the UN during UN General Assembly Week to cover stories about the SDGs and to be able to talk to young audiences around the world, leveraging Facebook Live, Twitter chats, etc., so that our Girl Up teen advisors, our Nothing But Nets young champions, etc., can all find their own voice and their own angle of how to tell stories about the goals. We've found that we've increased media about sustainability and the goals by 228% between 2014 and 2015, and we really do put a lot of that down to our relationships with the media. That's all. If anyone has questions, I'm here this evening. Thank you.
Our last panelist is Jake Horowitz, who is the editor-at-large and co-founder of Mike, where he contributes feature stories and advises on editorial strategy. He is also a UN representative for the SDGs. Jake.
Thank you. How's everyone doing? Let's wake people up in here. How about it in the top? There we go. So thank you very much, and I'm excited to be here with everybody. So I'm a journalist. I'm not a diplomat, so I may be the lone exception up here. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about my own story and what I think it shares with all of you to really work toward these goals. So in short, I was living as a journalist in Beirut and in Damascus about 5.5 years ago, and I saw young people our age, coming to the streets in Tunisia and in Cairo and in Iran and here in New York, making their voices heard using Facebook, using our phones, and proving that we are a generation to be reckoned with. At the time, there was still a stereotype about the quote-unquote millennials, that we are light and that we're fluffy and that we don't care about what's happening in the world, and I just knew that wasn't true. So I teamed up with a friend of mine, my lifelong friend from high school, and we set out to create a media company, a news company that appealed to our generation and told stories that really reflected our generation's sensibility. We wanted to create the next CNN, the next major news platform that appealed to us. We were 23 years old. We had no idea what we were doing. We moved into a small brownstone up in Harlem here in New York City, threw all of our money into this project, and we tried to harness our generation's collective energy and capacity to do good. So 5.5 years later now, Mike, the media company that I started, is one of the leading media companies for millennials all over the world. So we reach 100 million people every given month, and we're telling stories that really reflect our generation's sensibility. And that's everything from stories about Black Lives Matter to gender equality to Native American issues to all of the major social justice issues that our generation stands for. So if I had one message to share with the group today, it's prove it. It's our generation's time to really show that we have a voice and that we can go and do and think big and tackle our generation's leading problems. When we started, everybody told us there was no way that we were going to create a media company to get people our age to care about anything serious. And we knew that wasn't true, and we just set out to prove it. Just 2 days ago, I was at JFK Airport, and I saw what started as a protest with 20 people turn into 2,000 people and 5,000 people. And then yesterday I went to Battery Park City, and there were 15,000 people here in New York City protesting Donald Trump and his un-American executive order on immigration, which he just came out with, which is frankly a travesty to our democracy. Those people are proving it. Those people came out into the streets, and they showed that our generation is a force to be reckoned with. So whatever you're doing, whatever country you're in, whether it's protesting in the streets, whether it's using Facebook and Instagram and Facebook Live and these amazing tools at our disposal to make our voices heard, whether it's lobbying and talking to your members of Congress in your own country. We had a member of Congress who came into Mike just 2 weeks ago, and we asked him, what can we do to make your life hell? And you know what he told us? He said, you need 5 people and a camera, and you go to your local representative's office, and you make your voices heard. That's all it takes. So what I want to say to this room, thank you. What I want to say to this room, and I mean this with all respect, because I have the utmost respect for everybody on this stage, but I've been to really incredible places this year. I've been to Davos. I'm here in the UN. The power is with the people, and we need more action, and we need our generation on the streets, and we need our generation making our voices heard. It's too important of a time. I think we're going to see more creativity, more powerful protest, and more action from our generation than we've ever seen because of this administration. But I want to see that all over the world because we need it, and our generation needs to be heard. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jake. So in a couple minutes, we're going to open it up to questions from all of you, and I'm excited to hear what they are. I am not a diplomat like Jake. And I'm an academic, and academics tend to, when they ask for questions, to make long-winded speeches. And so I don't know how it works here, but generally when I hold a meeting, I ask people to remember that questions are short, succinct interrogatives, which usually end with a raising of the voice, and they can be answered in some way. So I'm going to encourage you to think about that when you think about how you formulate your questions. I'm going to demonstrate with a question to the panel before we open it up. So one thing that I heard a lot of you talk about was the power and importance of creative storytelling, as well as building new tools for storytelling and being heard. Can you share what you found to be the key design principles or strategies for storytelling in this day and age? Anyone can start.
Well, I'm happy to just say a quick thing on that, which is, Mike, my company, is using Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook Live, building, telling stories on these platforms and reaching powerful audiences. But what I always tell people all the time, for individuals, is there's really nothing stopping you from doing that. I mean, I've been looking around the room. Everybody has a phone, right? And everybody's on Facebook. And everybody knows how to go live. So I think as you're thinking about in your own countries and context how to use these tools for you, I would say, use the tools at our disposal and find your voice on those platforms and speak up and be heard. I know that sounds like a lot of platitudes, but what we saw, just a few months ago here in the U.S., has anybody heard of Standing Rock, the Standing Rock situation? Yeah, so just a few months ago here in the U.S., Native American issues, which are so important but rarely get discussed, came front and center and became a cause. And we saw people from all over the country mobilizing using Facebook and social media to make their voices heard around Standing Rock. And they actually won. They stopped a pipeline by people coming together out of nowhere to make their voices heard. So I would encourage people to think about how to use your phone for a lot of good.
I would just add that I think that whatever platform or era you're living in, and whatever your medium is, the same thing goes for any kind of storytelling, that you figure out what story you're trying to tell and who you're trying to tell it to, and then the story tells itself, whether you're doing a VR film or a Facebook Live or writing a book.
Anybody else want to share?
Hi, thank you. I would simply add, when it comes to storytelling and getting your voice out there, join a community. If you don't have a community to join, then build a community. Join Europort, join the Girl Guides. It's not a plug for our organizations. It's about saying we're made up of individuals who've come together out of a shared recognition that when we're many voices, we're louder and it's easier to be heard. Through this app and through the platform we now have that the guides are using on Europort, you can actually share those stories. You can reach a community. There's nearly 3 million young people from around the world there. So that power of sharing stories and building relationships and building communities is really important for marginalized people so they know they're not alone. As we'd heard from Jake, it can change the world. So yeah, join up.
Another question? Do you want? No? Okay. Let's open it up to everyone here in the room. So I see hands raised. I don't know if I'm supposed to also see things here. But I'm just going to start by calling on the first woman I saw in the back. Yes, with the black shirt. Yes, you. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mila. I'm a board member at the National Youth Council of Serbia. And I would have one really quick question for any of the panelists, actually, since it's about the topic that we're discussing right now. So we talk a lot about the role of technology in sharing information, in calling for action, et cetera, but we cannot ever neglect the fact that many young people actually do not have the access to internet, the access to technology. So my question would be, how would you suggest that we include these young people as well, since their voice must be heard as well? Thank you.
James?
Hey, thanks for that question. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, while technology is growing, penetration is increasing drastically, there is a gap. The gap varies, okay? So it really depends where, and to get to the topic exactly about monitoring of SDGs, there's been research in some countries, for example, Zimbabwe, where we know that the phone penetration, which is 79%, in Africa it's 73%, is actually a good cross-section of society. So if you're looking for representative data, you can get it through a mobile phone in many countries. However, that doesn't mean everybody has access. There was an example by the SDG Action Campaign. It used to be called the Millennium Campaign. Around the world we want. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. They were able to go out and mobilize networks of volunteers to vote on paper around what was important for them in the goals. And I think they got around 9 million votes by doing that. They were able to go through governors. I know the mayor of Mexico City was involved. There's a big organization in Nigeria that got involved, at NYSC, a youth group. And we've seen it as well recently in Myanmar. 30 volunteers were told by the Ministry of Youth, if you can get 10,000 people, we will listen to you when it comes to forming the new policy. And those 30 volunteers went out and physically mobilized those people through university networks. Another great network, and I'm not plugging anybody, but ISIC has 100,000 youth volunteers that go out into communities doing work around sustainable development goals that might not be connected in any other way, so face-to-face interaction. But that takes a lot of goodwill, a lot of grassroots movement, a lot of enthusiasm and belief in what you're doing, but you can mobilize millions that way.
Anyone else in the panel want to add? Okay. Yeah, we're going to have to do this by hands. I know there's a question from Latvia. Could I hear the question from Latvia?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. And my question to maybe all panelists is one thing what is needed on local, regional or global level to encourage the development of youth innovation. Thanks.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I think, sorry, it's me again. Entrepreneurship, is it an innate ability, or does there need to be certain factors in place for it to even metabolize? Probably more the latter, just creating the opportunity. I know that international organizations are starting to get around this. I know the GSMA, which is the big mobile organization, has an innovation fund now. UNHCR recently launched an innovation fund. And of course, I'd be remiss, UNICEF also has an innovation fund with a deadline of tomorrow that's giving grants to people that run CSOs or small businesses that want up to $50,000 to $100,000 for a technology grant. So these opportunities are out there. There needs to be more of them. It's not a lot of money, but it is definitely a start. So I think that you'll see more and more of it. But again, that all comes from member states ultimately. So I'd encourage it.
Yes, from our point of view, we would like to invite you and all the youth around here, because tomorrow we are launching a Youth Commission on Science, Engineering and Technology for SDGs here as a side event. And this will be the open space for all of young people to engage, no matter if they are actually active on social media. We also would like to underline here that technologies are not only social media, and therefore thank you, Mila, for the question.
Next. Yes, in the back. No, right behind you, sorry. Yes, please, in the back.
Hello. My name is Rizan Al-Akil from Saudi Arabia, and we talked about having access to technology, and we talked about that the technology is not just social media. So let's put this together. So let's say someone knows how to code, and we actually bring coding to school, and then someone knows how to do entrepreneurship. How can we join forces and actually bring a good curriculum or a good program to schools so they can bring all of these good talents to students? So once they graduate, or as they are in school, they can actually benefit their communities, and with that, they can do something better for their future with access, with the knowledge that's needed. So can we actually, or is there anything that's set in place that can be done, or we can know about it? Thank you.
From tomorrow, we will have the Youth Commission, so maybe that could be a starting point. But also, maybe it's important to mention that technology could be used as a translator together with some other sciences, some other topics like sports, culture, medicine. So that could be also something to the new space for youth to engage on the use of technologies.
I'll also say there's some amazing organizations in the United States and the UK that have done work on coding with young people. And I've also thought about hackathons. Young Rewired State in the UK is a great one that thinks about the civic implications of the stuff that people build as they learn to code. Next question? Yes, this time.
Hello, my name is Galina. I am with Goodler. It's a private organization. So my question would be to how your organizations work with private sector, because public-private partnership is very, very important in achieving SDGs. So if any of you can say, what do you do, what you're looking for in those partnerships, and how private companies can get involved?
I'll just answer very briefly that at the UN Foundation, part of what we do and how we survive is public-private partnerships. One of the ways, when I was talking about increasing media by 228%, the project itself, the initiative, is called the Global Bureau, and it's based on media partnerships and trainings, etc. One of our biggest partners and funders is MasterCard in that case, and they work in very innovative ways with the World Food Programme, and so they came to us together as a partner and were able to help us fund media trainings around the world to discuss financial inclusion.
Great, thank you. Yes.
My name is Eric Farr from the Baha'i International Community. In thinking about technology, technological innovation doesn't follow necessarily an inevitable trajectory, but is guided by certain principles and values. At the same time, the adoption of technology or its spread is also not kind of a valueless process. So I'm just wondering, when we're thinking about youth and technology, what's being learned in these different agencies and organizations about helping youth to reflect critically that their technological innovation is being guided by the spirit of the SDGs, as well as kind of pursuing the numerical goals, and also that we're really empowering youth to exercise volition and choice in the adoption of those technologies.
Great question. Anyone want to, Zane?
I would just say that the Girl Up campaign that I mentioned earlier, which has, I think, over 500,000 girls, really was created for girls by girls, and it's a completely grassroots campaign, and we don't do anything without the girls deciding what we're going to do. So if they decide, and if you put the SDGs aside for 1 minute, knowing that that's their guiding principle, if they decide that one year, a real-life example is that they knew that it was difficult for girls in Guatemala to get to school. They were either being raped or abducted or weren't able to fix their bikes to get there, etc. So the girls themselves come up with a campaign where it would cost $125 to buy a bicycle for a girl, including the toolkit to fix the bike, the headlight, etc. They're able to raise enough money to be able to get 550 girls to school that year in Guatemala, and then they found that the presence of girls in schools increased by over 20% that year. So I only raise this as an example because we believe that the girls themselves should decide what the campaign is and how it should be implemented, and we think that that's how they're going to get closer to getting to the SDGs.
Speaking from the civic technology community, there are efforts such as collaborative design to think about how you not only work with people to understand the solutions that they need, but actually empower them to do the design work themselves. And then there's a whole movement called Build With, Not For, that was started by Lauren Ellen McCann, which is about, along those same lines, that you're not actually building something for people, you're building it with them. And so finding ways to actually a value-forward process in actually the design of the technologies. So we have time for one last question, unfortunately. So I'm going to ask this gentleman right here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Hilary Taylor, and I'm representing the World Federation of United Nations Associations. We've talked about technology, and well, let me concentrate to the tool of social media. We've seen that time and again it has given young people a platform to raise out their concerns that their leaders have failed to, tackle. But again, how can we be mindful of social media? Because we've seen the same tool we are praising is the same tool that, terrorist groups are using to radicalize young people. If you look at terrorist groups, majority of, of their recruitments, they are young people. So how can we block this? This kind of recruitment of young people through radicalization via the social media. Then also, going back to Africa, we've seen that Africa has, problems with technology. We are still at low levels compared to developed countries. So how can we use technology to localize the SDGs to the languages that the African people are going to understand? I come from Uganda, and my country, we have, over 56 local languages. So how can we develop a tool that is going to enable even a young person in the rural area to understand the SDGs than, young people who are based in urban areas? Thank you.
So 2 questions there. James, you want to take one?
Yeah, I'll take both of them, even the doozy of the first one. I think, to give a diplomat's answer, with the first one, look, I see it as a battle between good information and bad information in the social mediums. Like, obviously, the companies have a responsibility themselves and are increasingly doing so to clamp down on it. But I think, ultimately, what drives a young person to it, maybe not being listened to in the first place. So how are we using that forum for good information, ensuring that people are part of the process and aren't excluded. I think if we can really take that seriously, then half the battle is won. On the subject of localized languages, I actually used to live in Uganda, and we started the project there. And I think that you'll find these days that a lot of the technologies are multi-language. We launched U-Report there in Luo, Karamojong, and also Lugandan. But there's many more other languages, but you need to take the time to be able to translate, at least starting with the most commonly spoken ones while making sure you're not excluding anybody.
Anyone else want to chime in? Zoe?
I would just like to add, this is something that we've actually been able to use the tool U-Report towards looking into. My partner organization, the World Organization of the Scout Movement, WOSM, they actually designed a poll around these issues, looking into the subject of religious tolerance, asking young people if their faith or if their culture, if their beliefs promote peace. And they were able to feed those results. They got back directly from young people into their interreligious dialogue that they actually had, in order to help build their strategies on how we can reach, I think the Scouts, if I'm not mistaken, have 40 million young people around the world. So a big youth movement like that can actually ask young people directly these sorts of issues through the platform that we have, which really gives them the opportunity, as we've been echoing in different ways, to be part of the solution and to be included in the dialogue as opposed to spoken at. So that's a really, really fantastic way that we're able to address these issues, by going directly to young people and working with them to consult on designing the questions and being able to report back to them how we're actually using that information for them.
Nevada?
We should ensure spaces for youth to engage in the technology facilitation mechanism, ensuring their participation in dialogue and decision-making to promote knowledge and tech transfer. And I also hope that, responding to your question and to many other questions, and also to some of my questions, maybe ECOSOC forum and having you all here in the years to come will provide some more answers too. Thank you.
Fortunately, that's all the time we have left. Please welcome, or please thank the panel with me. You're welcome. Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Graf. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and youth participants, on behalf of the forum, I would like to express my appreciation to Mr. Erhard Graf for expertly moderating this afternoon's session, and to our panelists for their insights and views on the role of technology in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. I also would like to thank delegations for their active interest and active participation in the discussions. It's unfortunate we don't have enough time to take all the questions, but we depend on other systems which assist us, which are bound by time. The Youth Forum will continue tomorrow morning. There will be 5 parallel breakout sessions from 9:30 in the morning to 10:50, and on key regional priorities for youth development. As you know, we have the 5 regions. The regional groupings of these breakout sessions and their respective venues are available online and will also be published in tomorrow's journal. We will convene tomorrow at 11 a.m. in this chamber for a report on the breakout sessions, followed by a panel discussion on the topic of, and I quote, youth engagement in eradicating poverty and promoting prosperity, voices from the field, unquote. And once again, Mr. Graf, thank you very much. And with these concluding remarks, our meeting is adjourned.